Greetings from Baltimore. I'm Charlie Wiener. I'm the Vice President of Academic Affairs for Johns Hopkins Medicine International and Professor of Medicine and Physiology at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. First, let me apologize for not being there in person. I was tremendously looking forward to talking to you about Genes to Society at your symposium and was welcoming the opportunity to share your thoughts, hear your feedback, and participate in all the vigorous discussions. Unfortunately, I have to be in another part of the world, so I cannot physically be there. But what I would like to say is just a few brief comments about what I was going to speak about and why I believe this is one of the most remarkable and exciting times to be in medicine and medical education in history. Why? Because we, the clinicians and the educators, are part of history's third major paradigm shift in medicine and therefore medical education. That is the third paradigm shift in historical context. We are entering an era where individualized medicine is becoming a reality. And this is something that clinicians for over 100 years, including William Osler here at Johns Hopkins, envisioned, but because of technological limitations they could never realize. And that is that the care of individuals is paramount. However, our educational system, our medical system, could not understand how to cope with anything but universals or the classic case. This advance that's happening, put in contextual history for history, is what I call a paradigm shift and introduces us and makes us all part of the ongoing revolution into what I call the Genes to Society paradigm. What is a paradigm? Thomas Kuhn coined the term paradigm in 1962, and he used it to describe a scientific set of beliefs that define our current understanding and stimulate research. It is our belief system. The paradigm is our belief system. And what we do with research and with education is within a paradigm. However, what Kuhn also pointed out is that oftentimes research within one paradigm, and particularly technological advances that come during one paradigm, stimulate what he called paradigm shifts, where instead of science progressing linearly, it progresses linearly for some number of years, and then all of a sudden there's a seismic or a radical shift in understanding where we're operating at a whole new place. Kuhn described it for many of the sciences, physics, chemistry, but it's very, very applicable to medicine. And since how we practice medicine defines how we educate our students, I believe that these paradigm shifts are also important for medical education. When thinking about Western medicine, what was the very first paradigm? Well, in order to do that, you have to go back to about 500 or 600 BC. And at that time, our only understanding of health was that it was determined by deities or gods. And out of that came a medical paradigm where if you were unhealthy, you prayed to the gods, and if you were healthy, you thanked the gods. Out of this came the Roman god Asclepius, who was the god of health and gave us many of our symbols that we still carry, including the medical staff. But the basic paradigm was that if you were unhealthy, you appealed to the gods, or you went to shrines, or you performed sacrifices in order to get healthy. If you didn't get well, it's because the gods were angry with you. That paradigm lasted until approximately 500 BC, when the great Western thinkers Aristotle, Plato, Pythagoras introduced to all of us the scientific method. In medicine, the person who we think about during that era is Hippocrates, the father of medicine. Hippocrates made, along with many others, the seminal observation at that time. And remember, they were very smart people, but they were limited by their powers of observation. All they could do was observe. And what was their preeminent observation? That was that liquid was the source of all life. When spring came and the rains came, plants came to life. If you drained a tree of its sap, the tree would die. Concordantly, if you drained a human of its sap or its blood, it would die. Out of those observations came what we know of as the humoral theory of health and disease. That is that our bodies were composed of 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And your determination of health was based on the appropriate balance of the 4 humors. And out of that became therapies such as cupping, or bloodletting, purging, or other ways of trying to restore order to your four humors. There are many analogies between that paradigm and the yin and the yang paradigm of Eastern or Chinese medicine. It turns out that the great Roman physician Galen solidified the humoral theory in about 1 to 200 AD after Christ, and that paradigm is going to last until the 1600s. Therefore, the humoral paradigm dominated human history for about 2,000 years. But then what happened? How did that paradigm shift and develop a new paradigm? In 1628, William Harvey published De Motu Cordis, on the motion of the heart, that first described the circulation. He described by simply observing veins in the arms that are, instead of having blood going through arteries and veins separately, that there was actually a circulation. Once they hypothesized and proved the existence of a circulation, Galenic and Hippocratic physiology were no longer viable, and the humoral paradigm disappeared. Out of Harvey's observations and subsequently the discovery of microbiology came what I call the modern medicine paradigm. And it was that paradigm that existed from about the 1600s all the way up to 2003 and is what I call modern medicine. Now, how does medical education fit into that paradigm? Well, in 1893, in North American medical education, the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine was opened as the first four-year postgraduate coeducational medical school in North America. A number of years later, the U.S. government, led by the Flexner Report, or influenced by the Flexner Report, concluded that the Hopkins medical education model was the model by which all U.S. and subsequently North American medical schools existed. And that is why in the United States we now have a medical education system that had 2 years of preclinical, 2 years of clinical, with subsequent graduate and residency training afterwards. It all started at Hopkins. But now we are in a new paradigm. In 2003, we elucidated the reference genome. That was the technological breakthrough that is going to shake up the modern medicine paradigm and bring to us what I call the genes to society paradigm. And whether you call the medicine in this precision medicine or individualized medicine, it tells us that our health is determined by the balance of what goes on inside our body, that is our genetics, our cell biology, our epigenetics, our physiology, influenced by what goes on outside our body, by our environment, our sociology, our communities, and most importantly, our behaviors. And it is that balance between our internal characteristics, our internal predisposition for disease, our risk of disease, modified by the external forces such as behavior and environment, that determines health and welfare. This paradigm does not say that all medicine is about individuals, because this paradigm also recognizes that the health of communities, the health of populations are determined by the same factors. Therefore, concordant with the rise of individualized medicine is the rise of public health, and is why I call this new paradigm genes to society. At Johns Hopkins, since we were the leaders of medical education in 1893, we felt it was incumbent upon us to recognize this new paradigm shift, that this new paradigm was occurring, and change our medical education concordantly. Therefore, we totally reformed our medical school curriculum to reflect the framework of human variability, genes to society, and public health as the basis for our medical students understanding the balance between health and disease. And it is that framework that we've been educating students with since 2009. It is a framework that I think every week we learn new developments that validate why this Genes to Society paradigm is so important and so vital, and therefore will be of growing importance, and therefore we as medical educators are obligated to teach our students this framework from the day they start medical education. We have way too much information. We know that. We're in an information overload era. However, just like we solved the problems of understanding the circulation, of discovering the microbes, of defining the human genome, we will figure out how to cope with all this information. Or more importantly, our students will figure out how to cope with it. But we must give them the tools to analyze these data and understand these precepts. It is a very exciting time. I think that I'm honored and thrilled to be part of this revolution. And no matter what you call this, you as medical educators must share this obligation to teach our students in the way that we will be practicing medicine in the next 10, 20, or 50 years. I don't think this paradigm is going to last 2,000 years. I hope it doesn't, because I hope we have new breakthroughs that bring us to a better place in our understanding of health and disease. But for right now, for the near future, for the next decade to even longer, I believe that the Gene Society paradigm is the right paradigm both to teach medical students, to practice medicine, and to improve the health of our communities. Thank you very much. Enjoy the conference, and I hope to see you again at a very soon time. Thank you.